I wasn't supposed to be there past closing. The repair shop shuts down at 6, but the hum of machines and the smell of oil always make time slip. I'd stayed behind to finish an old radio someone had dropped off, a wooden box from the 60s, knobs missing, dial cracked, but still stubbornly clinging to life. I like things like that, broken, but not done yet. That's when she came in. The door chime didn't even sound right. It hesitated, a dull ting that hung in the air like a thought half-formed. She stood in the doorway, framed by the flickering light above the counter. Mid-40s, maybe older, though age didn't seem to sit on her so much as around her, like she wore it deliberately, the way people wear leather that's softened in all the right places. Her hair was damp from the rain, her jacket still glistening where the drops hadn't dried. She glanced around, eyes catching on the shelves, the clutter, the radio guts spread out on my workbench. "I saw the sign," she said, voice steady but low. "Do you fix cassette players too?" I wiped my hands on a rag, trying not to sound like someone who'd suddenly forgotten how to speak. "Yeah, depends what's wrong with it." She opened her bag, a soft, dark leather thing that looked expensive without trying, and placed a small player on the counter. A silver Sony Walkman. The buttons were worn smooth, the kind of wear you only get from years of use. "It eats tapes," she said. "Or maybe it's just tired." I smiled at that. Machines don't get tired, just neglected. That made her look up at me, properly this time. Not in that fleeting customer service way, but like she was weighing something behind my words. Her eyes were gray-green, calm but searching. She didn't reply, just tilted her head slightly, as if letting the silence settle between us. I took the player, feeling the faint warmth of her hand still clinging to the metal. "I can look at it tonight. Pick it up tomorrow?" "Tomorrow," she repeated, like she was testing the sound. "That's fine." But she didn't leave. She lingered, gaze drifting to the workbench where the old radio sat half open, wires curling like veins. "You like saving things," she said quietly. "I guess I do," I replied. "Sometimes they just need a little patience." There was a pause, long enough for me to hear the rain again, pattering against the windows. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that never quite reaches the eyes but leaves something warmer in its wake. Then she said, almost to herself, "Patience isn't always enough." Before I could respond, she turned and headed for the door. The chime hesitated again when she left, a half sound that matched the half words sitting in my chest. When I looked down, I realized she'd forgotten a tape, still sitting on the counter, labeled in faded blue ink. For later. I held it for a while before tucking it away in a drawer, not sure why I didn't chase after her. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe it was the way her voice had softened when she said that line. Either way, the moment stayed. Even now, I can still see the way she stood in the doorway, half in, half out, as if deciding whether to start something or end it. And the strangest part? When I finally turned off the lights that night, I realized I'd been thinking about her silence more than her words. The next morning, I pressed play on her cassette. The tape word caught and stopped, like even it had something it wasn't ready to say. She came back 2 days later, not the next morning like she said. The rain had cleared, leaving the air sharp with that clean, metallic smell that only follows a storm. I was tightening a loose dial on the Walkman when I heard the door open. Same soft chime, same hesitation before it rang. "I didn't mean to keep you waiting," she said, her voice quieter this time. I turned, surprised at how easily her presence filled the room again. She wore a simple navy blouse and carried herself like someone used to being in control, shoulders straight, chin slightly tilted, but her eyes betrayed something else today. They looked tired. Not the kind that comes from lack of sleep, but the kind that builds when someone's been holding everything together too long. "It's fine," I said. "Machines don't mind waiting." She smiled faintly at that, a single dimple forming before she caught it and looked away. I could tell she didn't want to seem soft. I placed the Walkman on the counter, rewound her tape to the beginning, and hit play. A low, crackling melody spilled out, something jazzy and imperfect, the kind of music that sounds like a confession. She stood closer than before, arms folded but not defensive, more like she didn't know where to put them. "You fixed it," she said. I nodded. It just needed new belts. A little pressure in the right places. Her gaze flicked to mine at that line, sharp for half a second, then softened. You talk about these things like they're people. Maybe they are, I said. At least the ones that still matter to someone. That made her laugh, a quiet, reluctant sound that somehow made the room feel warmer. But halfway through, she stopped herself, as if catching something private in the air. She touched her wrist absent-mindedly, where the skin was paler beneath a missing watch. You noticed too much, she murmured. I didn't answer. I just leaned back on the counter, pretending to busy myself with some tools. She picked up the cassette player, her thumb brushing the corner I'd taped for stability. How much do I owe you? Nothing, I said before thinking. It wasn't much. She frowned slightly. You should charge me. You're running a business. Consider it an experiment. An experiment. To see if fixing something for free makes it last longer. That made her pause again, her mouth parting slightly like she wanted to argue, but didn't. The silence that followed was heavier this time, but not uncomfortable. Finally, she said, you shouldn't do that. You'll start expecting something back. Her tone was light, but her eyes weren't. There was a flicker there, a warning or a confession, I couldn't tell. Before I could find an answer, she reached for the door. Her fingers lingered on the handle. Then she glanced back once, expression unreadable. Still, she said softly, thank you. And just like before, she was gone, leaving the faint trace of her perfume and a half-finished thought that refused to fade. I stood there a long while, staring at the empty doorway, realizing that some silences feel louder than anything you could ever say. She started dropping by more often after that, always with some small excuse, a humming noise from the player, a loose wire, a question she already knew the answer to. And each time, she stayed a little longer. That evening, the rain had returned, heavier this time, beating against the tin roof like it wanted in. The shop lights flickered under the gray, and the air carried that scent of wet pavement and machine oil. I was closing up when she appeared again, clutching the Walkman under her jacket. I think it's acting up again, she said, shaking off rain from her sleeves. It's not, I said gently, but you can still come in. She hesitated, then did, pulling the door shut behind her. The world outside dissolved into the sound of rain and the low hum of the heater. I set her Walkman aside and poured us both some coffee from the pot I'd forgotten to turn off. It tasted burnt, but neither of us complained. She sat on the stool near the workbench, running her fingers along the grain of the wood. Her nails were neat but unpolished. She had that same faint smell of rain and perfume I couldn't name. You ever feel like you're living the same day over and over? She asked suddenly. I looked up. Every time I fixed the same model twice. That made her smile, but her eyes didn't follow. I mean more than that. Like you got stuck somewhere you can't leave, even if nothing's actually wrong. I didn't know what to say. The rain filled the silence for me. She reached into her bag and pulled out a cassette, different from before. The label read, Us. Don't ask what's on it, she said, sliding it across the counter. Just keep it. Her hand brushed mine as she did, a small, accidental touch that wasn't accidental at all. My breath caught for half a second. It wasn't attraction in the usual sense, more like standing too close to a fire you didn't know you'd lit. Before either of us could speak, her phone rang, a sound too sharp for the softness of that moment. She glanced at the screen, froze. The name lit across the glass, Daniel. She silenced it without answering, slipped the phone back in her bag. Your husband? I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked to mine, unreadable. Not anymore. Then came that pause again, the same one that had hung between us since the first night. The air was thick with what neither of us could say. The heater clicked off, leaving only the rain. She leaned forward slightly, elbows on her knees, hair falling loose from behind her ear. I could have reached out. I wanted to, but I didn't. Instead, I said quietly, you should go before the storm gets worse. She didn't move. Not at first. Then she stood, slowly, gathering her things. When she reached the door, she stopped, not turning around. Maybe next time, you'll play the tape, she said softly. The door shut behind her, and the sound of rain rushed back in like breath. I didn't move for a long time. The tape sat on the counter between my hands, warm from hers. I didn't play it. Not yet. But I wanted to. And that was the problem. The storm lasted 3 days. By the time she returned, the streets were littered with broken branches and puddles that looked like mirrors of the gray sky. She didn't call, didn't text, just appeared in the doorway again, her hair still damp from the drizzle, her eyes heavier than before. "I didn't mean to come," she said, stepping inside anyway. "I didn't mean to wait," I answered. That made her pause, but she didn't smile. She closed the door behind her and stood near the counter, not touching anything, just there. The Walkman sat between us like something sacred or dangerous. I couldn't tell which anymore. I tried to joke, to break the air. "You know, if you keep pretending it's broken, I'll start charging for fake repairs." She looked up at me then, and it was the first time she didn't deflect with a smile. "You think that's what this is?" The room fell quiet again. The kind of quiet that hums, that builds pressure in the space between two people. "I don't know what this is," I said honestly. "You come here. We talk. You leave. And somehow, that feels like everything and nothing at the same time." She stepped closer, slow, deliberate. I could hear her breathing now, steady, but a little uneven. Her eyes searched mine, as if looking for something she'd lost there. "Do you know what happens when you spend too long pretending something isn't happening?" she asked. "No, you start believing it." Her words hit harder than I expected. She leaned against the counter, her fingers brushing the edge, nails tapping once, twice. I wanted to ask her what she was trying to say, but I already knew. "You shouldn't be here," I said quietly. "I know. Then why do you keep coming back?" She exhaled, slow, shaky. "Because when I'm here, I stop hearing everything else." The way she said it, it wasn't about me, not really. It was about the silence, the pause in her life that only this place seemed to give her. I looked at her hands, pale against the dark counter, the small tremor in her right one, the faint gold band still marking her finger, though no ring sat there anymore. She caught me looking, then withdrew her hand as if I'd burned her. "Don't look at me like that," she whispered. "Like what?" "Like I'm something you're trying to fix." That hurt in a way I couldn't explain, because maybe that's what I'd been doing all along, mistaking her broken edges for something I could make whole again. Neither of us moved. The hum of the heater filled the silence, a soft, mechanical heartbeat. Then she said it, the thing that broke the room open. "What are we doing?" I didn't have an answer. Just the sound of my pulse in my ears, the faint static of the radio in the corner, and her voice, fragile, exhausted, real. When she finally turned to leave, she didn't look back this time. Only said, quietly, almost to herself, "Whatever this is, it can't last." And somehow, that hurt more than if she'd said goodbye. A week passed before I saw her again. The shop felt wrong without her, the hum too constant, the silence too expectant. I tried playing her tape a dozen times, but I never got past the first few seconds. It wasn't music, just static, soft clicks, maybe the beginning of someone's voice before it cut off. That morning, she arrived early. The sun hadn't even cleared the roofs yet, and I was still unlocking the back door when I saw her through the window. She wasn't dressed like usual, no jacket, no careful polish. Just a loose gray sweater and hair pulled back like she hadn't planned to be seen. "Can I sit?" she asked. I nodded, moving a pile of tools aside. She didn't bring the Walkman this time. No pretense. Just her. For a while, she said nothing. The air smelled faintly of dust and cold metal. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a folded photograph. "I thought I'd thrown this away," she murmured, handing it to me. It was old, creased, edges soft. A man stood beside her, smiling, maybe 10 years younger than she was now. His hand rested lightly on her shoulder. There was something familiar about his eyes, warm, searching. "That's Daniel," she said. "My husband." I looked up at her, but she wasn't looking at me. Her gaze was fixed somewhere else, on the corner of the room, or maybe on a memory I couldn't see. "He used to fix things," she said. "Radios, watches, small stuff. He said it kept him patient. When he got sick, he stopped. Couldn't stand the sound of anything breaking anymore." I set the photo down gently. "I'm sorry." She gave a faint, humorless laugh. "Everyone says that. But grief doesn't listen. It just sits where it wants." The heater clicked on, filling the air with its steady hum. Her eyes glistened faintly, though she never looked at me long enough for the tears to fall. When I first came here, she continued, it wasn't for the cassette player. It was for the sound, the noise, the tools, the mess. It reminded me of him. I thought maybe if I stood in it long enough, something would come back. She finally met my eyes. You look like him, you know. Not exactly, but enough. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The room felt smaller, the walls closer. So when I talk to you, she said softly, I'm not sure which of you I'm talking to. Something inside me shifted, something I hadn't realized was fragile until that moment. I wanted to tell her that I wasn't him, that I didn't want to be, but the words wouldn't form. Maybe because, somewhere deep down, a part of me had liked the way she looked at me. All that history, all that hurt. Her hand brushed the photo again before pulling it back toward her. I shouldn't have told you this, she whispered. Maybe you should have, I said. She smiled faintly, tired, beautiful, real. No, now it's different. And it was. The space between us wasn't warm anymore. It was reverent, haunted, alive with everything unspoken. Before she left, she placed the photo on the counter and said quietly, keep it. Maybe he'll fix something through you. Then she walked out into the morning light, and for the first time, I didn't follow her with my eyes. I just stared at the photo, his smile, her ghost beside it, and felt something in me quietly come undone. She didn't come for days after that. The photo stayed on my counter, gathering dust. I told myself I wasn't waiting, that I'd moved on, that people drift in and out of each other's lives all the time. But every night, I'd find myself wiping the same spot clean, aligning the edges of the picture as if straightening it could make the absence less crooked. Then one evening, just before closing, I heard the familiar soft chime of the door. She stood there, no coat this time, no bag. Just her, in a faded sweater and tired eyes. I shouldn't have left like that, she said. I nodded, but didn't speak. The air felt thick, fragile. She moved closer, stopping at the counter where the photograph still lay. Her gaze softened when she saw it. You kept it. I couldn't throw it away, I said. Didn't feel like mine to do that. She reached out, fingers tracing the edge of the photo. He would have liked you. I'm not sure that's a good thing. It is, she said, voice quiet but sure. You listen the same way he did. You fix things without asking why they broke. She looked up at me then, really looked. And for the first time, there wasn't guilt in her eyes. Just exhaustion. Honesty. I think I came here to remember him, she said. But somewhere along the way, I started remembering myself too. Her words landed softly, like dust settling. I didn't reach for her. Didn't need to. The silence between us was its own kind of closeness. I don't want to take anything from you, I said. You haven't, she replied. You just stood still long enough for me to catch my breath. The clock on the wall ticked. Outside, the sky was bruising into dusk, pale gold fading into gray. She leaned against the counter, inches from me now. I could feel the warmth of her through the thin space between us. For a long time, neither of us moved. Then she reached out, slowly, resting her hand over mine. No tremor, no hesitation, just quiet contact, steady and deliberate. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't a promise. It was something heavier, simpler. The kind of touch that says, I see you. I don't know what comes next. But for now, this is enough. We stayed like that until the heater clicked off, and the only sound left was the rain beginning again outside. She exhaled softly. You're going to be fine, you know. So are you, I said. Her thumb brushed once against my hand. Barely there, but it felt like the final line of something we'd both been writing without knowing it. When she finally let go, she didn't take the photo. She just smiled, small, knowing, and whispered, don't wait. The door closed behind her, gentle, final. I stood there a long while, listening to the rain and the echo of her words. And though she was gone, I realized my heart already had. It's been almost a year since I last saw her. The photo still sits on the counter, framed now, not because I couldn't move on, but because it feels like part of the story that built me. Sometimes customers ask who it is, and I just say, a reminder that everything worth fixing takes time. They nod, never really understanding, and that's fine. It's not theirs to understand. The shop feels different now. Quieter, steadier. I started taking fewer repairs, mostly older pieces, things people bring in because they can't let go. I get it now. Letting go isn't always about forgetting. Sometimes it's about carrying something differently. Every now and then, when the rain hits the roof just right, I still expect the door chime. That soft ting that never sounded the same twice. But it doesn't come. And the ache that used to follow has softened into something gentler, something almost like gratitude. I think about her sometimes, not the version who stood in the doorway, guarded and tired, but the one who finally allowed herself to be seen. The woman who came into a cluttered repair shop looking for a sound that reminded her of who she used to be. She once said patience isn't always enough. She was right, but it's a start. Patience gave her space to breathe again. Gave me a reason to look closer, at people, at silence, at the ways we hide what we need most. If I'm honest, I never stopped wondering what the rest of that tape said, the one labeled us. But I've never played it. I don't need to. Some stories aren't meant to be finished. Some just fade out softly, leaving the echo behind. I've fixed a lot of things since her: radios, clocks, small machines that people swore were beyond repair. But I stopped trying to fix people. I learned that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is to sit beside the wreckage and wait until they're ready to build again. Maybe that's what love really is. Not the grand gestures, not the promises, but the quiet willingness to stand still beside someone, even when everything else is falling apart. I don't know where she is now. Maybe she's by the ocean like she once mentioned. Maybe she finally played the song she was too afraid to hear. I hope so. I've stopped waiting. But I haven't stopped remembering. Because some connections don't fade. They just change shape, becoming part of the silence you learn to live inside. The sign outside still flickers when it rains. The coffee still burns if I forget it. Life goes on, in small, imperfect ways. And sometimes, when the night settles and the shop hums low, I whisper the words she left behind: "Don't wait." Then I smile to myself and think, my heart already did.